Welcome to the Homeschool Oklahoma podcast. Homeschool Oklahoma is the state organization for homeschooling in Oklahoma. We promote, protect, and encourage parent-led and family-funded Christian homeschooling in the state. Our goal is to help you build your family through homeschooling in the name of Jesus. The goal of this podcast is to help homeschoolers, especially Oklahoma homeschoolers, take full advantage of everything this state has to offer. My name is Jonathan Bartlett, and I am one of the board members of Homeschool Oklahoma. If you want to find out more about Homeschool Oklahoma or to help support us by becoming a member, head over to homeschooloklahoma.org and click the Join Now button. Today on the podcast, we have Christa Bartlett, who is a director at Classical Conversations of South Tulsa and has been homeschooling for 16 years. She's also been a board member of Homeschool Oklahoma for several years and runs the social media for the organization. And we've been married for 24 years. Christa, it's great to finally have you on the program.
Hi, John. It's good to actually talk to you this way, too.
So let's start out. Why did you originally start homeschooling, and how did you get into it?
We started homeschooling because when our older son was ready to go to kindergarten, it was time for him to go. And we had a lot of family pressure for him to go. We knew that because of some recent family trauma, it was a bad idea. So we decided we were going to homeschool for a year, for sure. And then we liked it so much, we just kept doing it.
So what were the things that you especially liked about doing homeschooling?
Well, one thing that we needed for our older son was that he would get to be with me and his brothers during the day and just enjoy the slower pace of family time. So when he was young and in kindergarten, we did a lot of just reading and cooking projects and yard projects and hanging out together and being a family, but we were able to do that all the time. I mean, of course, he learned the standard kindergarten stuff in the process of all of that. And we did a couple of workbooks like Explode the Code, and I think he started in Matthew C. math. And we did some kindergarten level stuff, but most of our time was just spent being a family.
So you originally started out with a Charlotte Mason group. Can you tell us a little bit about Charlotte Mason and how that fit into the whole scheme of things?
Well, Charlotte Mason is a 20th century. 20th? I give up. Charlotte Mason was a educator in Britain in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And she had some particular ideas on raising children and educating them that were all centered around the child as a human and not the child as a bucket to be filled or a computer to be programmed. She was very focused on helping people educate in a way that led to whole person development and just to walk in a life of wonder and amazement at the world we live in and the things people can create and the things that we can create without putting quite so much emphasis on things like completing a textbook or rote memorization. She would have children memorize beautiful things, but not random things. Or you would memorize necessary things, but not like multiplication tables, but you would not memorize lists of dates that are just kind of random.
So in addition to lists and memorization, what are some other differences that Charlotte Mason makes in home education?
Well, Charlotte Mason said that education is an atmosphere, a discipline, and a life. So she believed that education could be kind of divided into all of those things together and making up your education. So atmosphere would be like what's your environment like, what is your family like? How do you work together to create a place of peaceful learning? Discipline is the habit of showing up and doing the thing, and other habits that get your work done on a daily basis. And a life is just that you're not really confining your learning to one specific location or time of day, but that it's spread throughout your life. So that's probably an oversimplified explanation, but that's a pretty concise one.
So essentially, it sounds like Charlotte Mason brings education from being just something that you do in a box and integrates it through most of your life.
Right, where other curriculums are focused on taking care of very specific tasks and checking boxes and filling out worksheets. Charlotte Mason is more focused on what you can learn from the world around you, on reading good books written by authors who love their subject material, and a lot on using powers of attention and observation to enjoy the environment.
So you said authors who love their subjects. What would be a good and a bad example of something that Charlotte Mason would approve of and not approve of?
Something she would not likely approve is a book that was written by committee, a textbook that is put together and is very dry, contains a lot of information that's been kind of pulled from, put together by a bunch of different people, and is written without passion for the material. Mm-hmm. And a book that she might really enjoy would be, there's a book out right now, I can't think of the author's name, it's called I Contain Multitudes, and it is a discussion of the microbes that live inside human beings and how that works, how that they work to help or to harm the individual. It talks about, it's kind of like a universe within us, that's written by someone who's clearly passionate about the subject.
That's cool. So the written by committee sounds like most of the books that I read when I was in high school. I've actually seen that process, and where you basically have standards and the books have to be written according to the standards, and it's pretty much somebody copying those and adding paragraphs. So
for instance, you are very passionate about calculus, and you wrote a calculus textbook, which still seems really weird to me, but you wrote a calculus textbook where reading along in it, you can understand that the author is passionate about the subject and explains things very well. But is definitely things are being explained in a different order than in a standard curriculum, but it helps them to make more sense to an algebra student. So I think Charlotte Mason might like that too.
I appreciate that. So, what are your, if someone wanted to get involved in Charlotte Mason and understand her better, what's a good book about her method and her teaching style?
A good starting book is Susan Schaefer Macaulay's For the Children's Sake. It's a concise explanation of how her family applied the Charlotte Mason method when she was a child, and then how she applied it to her children. There are multiple books about Charlotte Mason education, but the best way to really understand it is to read Charlotte Mason's own books, starting with either the first volume, which is Home Education and is focused on younger children, or the last volume, which is a conglomeration of all of her ideas and how they were kind of distilled over 30 years of practice. It's called Towards a Philosophy of Education by Charlotte Mason.
Aha. So how do you now you've homeschooled all the way from kindergarten through now college.
I don't know that we really homeschool college. We homeschooled through graduation of high school, and we do indeed have a college student. It's a true story.
Good correction. So the how does the philosophy of Charlotte Mason how does it apply differently in the younger years and the older years, and how does that work?
Well, in the younger years, you're striving to keep subjects very short, like 20 minutes or less for young children. And as your students get older, you move more towards many subjects being a full class period, length of time, 45 or 50 minutes. Sometimes those subjects are very, very focused thinking, and brains get tired if they have not practiced the duration of consistent attention. So that's where the habit training comes in, that you've trained the child over time to be able to pay attention for a period of time. Also, when your students are young, they have less things that they're trying to accomplish. Basically, if your 7 or 8-year-old is working on learning to read and learning to do basic math, and then enjoying and taking in all sorts of other information in other ways, that requires a different kind of time and concentration than your high school student who has to finish a course in a specific amount of time in order to be done for the year, because they have summer job plans. They're not going to be working on school every day during the summer, so they need to be on some of a more consistent schedule that goes along with what the local school system is doing.
Now, writing in the 1800s and early 1900s, Charlotte Mason was not a homeschooler, was she?
No, she wasn't. She actually didn't have any children of her own at all, and she wasn't married. She ran a school called, the actual name of it just left me. She ran a school in Ambleside, England, for teachers who were learning how to teach others, and she also ran a kind of a correspondence course called the PNEU that helped parents educate their own children at home, or helped governesses educate children at home.
Mm-hmm. So now for Homeschool Oklahoma, you run a lot of the social media there, and one thing in particular that I think has been inspired by your Charlotte Mason is your beauty posts. Can you talk a little bit about the beauty posts and why you think they're important?
So my friend and I were talking about how when our children were young, one thing that was more difficult to do than we expected was to take a look at the composers and artists and poets, and to have a nature study focus, things that are kind of considered extras in public education today, but are just a beautiful way to look at the world and be inspired by things that are in the world. But when our kids were young, it was hard to do that because we didn't have time to hunt down the links, find the videos, and get it all set up, because we both had a bunch of little kids. So one thing that we started with this project was to gather all those links in one place and post them on Homeschool Oklahoma, and then have a reminder post every day at lunchtime in the social media, so that any day at lunchtime through our social media, you can click on the link in the post if you're on Facebook, or click through to the social media landing page if you are on Instagram, and go see what piece of art can we look at for a minute and just appreciate its beauty and pay attention to what's there. What piece of music could we listen to while we eat lunch that's just lovely and adds to our day in a very simple way. So all of the how-to for picture study, composer study, and hymn study. Those are all in the posts on the webpage every month. And then there's also, we've had up Aesop's Fables this year because we were kind of looking at ancient societies. We've had a look at world geography and always a nature study focus. The nature study focus for May, for instance, is on caterpillars. What kind of butterfly does this caterpillar become?
That's fun.
So we thought that would be fun for spring because we are nearing the caterpillar hatching stage for many species in Oklahoma.
So how does one go out and find caterpillars and eggs?
Well, you actually will find them as you're clearing out your garden to replant it. And as you plant your new flowers and get ready for the summer, you'll start to see, oh, look, here's a caterpillar. Another way, if you don't have your own flower beds that you're working with, would be that you could order a butterfly kit. And a company will actually send you caterpillars and a butterfly cage, which is just a special net bag kind of thing. And you can indeed hatch your own butterflies and then let them go in the wild.
That sounds fun. So for the beauty posts, what's your favorite painting that you look at that you have in your collection?
My favorite, there's a lot of paintings, John.
Yeah, what's
one of my favorites is Diego Velázquez Las Meninas. That is a painting of the artist. The artist is in the painting, which I think is really interesting. And he, in the painting, is painting a picture of the daughters of the royal court of Spain. And they're all dressed up in full costume. And the scene in general is so simple that it makes me wonder, like, what are they thinking about? What's going on in their day? What isn't in the picture? Like, are these little girls who are all dressed up, is someone in the background begging them to be still for the painting? Or is this just a natural scene? What's really going on here? But you know me, John, at most things I'm asking what's really going on here. It's what I do, how my mind works.
So what's your favorite favorite piece of music?
That changes. There is I've lost the name of the piece I'm looking for. There's the Fantasy in D minor that I used to play when I back when I actually practiced the piano on a regular basis. I think it was Chopin. But it was just a beautiful piece of piano music with a lot of, it would be going along in a particular pattern, and then all of a sudden there'd be something that was just kind of special, stuck in, that fit into the rhythm. And I liked how the melody would change and then come back to how it was originally. That's something I enjoy in music, is looking how someone took a theme and then did something just a little different with it, and then came back and reminded you what was the original theme. And then maybe you'll hear a different version of the theme, and it just kind of ebbs and flows with different changes in it.
So how do you incorporate this into a school day? What do you do with the art? What sort of questions do you ask? How does that work?
Well, this is actually something I haven't done in a little bit because, as you know, this last year in our house has been a little crazy with trying to get everybody where they needed to be.
Indeed.
But when they were younger and we were doing this on a very regular basis, I would just pull up a picture of the painting and we'd all look at it and talk about it. I never really approached it with a list of questions beyond what do you see. We would talk about what we did see. We might talk about what colors we saw, or how was the artist using light, or something like that. But it would all be very natural and just part of the conversation. We almost always started with, what do you see?
Mm-hmm.
And then I might ask more questions from there. And looking at that one painting might, if no one was interested, be a 30-second experience. And if they were really interested, we might talk about it for 5 minutes. But our picture study just doesn't really take that long to cement a painting in the mind and like kind of learn. And if you look at different paintings from the same artist over a short period of time, like a month or 6 weeks, you kind of get to know the artist in that you can recognize elements of their work that are consistent across it. And that's accessible even to very young children as they just get to know an artist.
So in Charlotte Mason, it seems like there's a very high focus on the beauty of the world as you find it. What does that bring to the growth of a person?
An awareness of what's around you is inspiring. If you're looking at life through a lens of wonder as you go along, you're always going to have something to smile about and be grateful for every day. And if you're aware of all of this beauty, it's easy to find beauty. You get really good at finding lovely things, even if you're not in a great situation. The paying attention to the good tends to distract you from things that aren't good, because everybody at every age has things going on in their day that aren't lovely. But to increase the amount of beauty you see kind of decreases the amount of yuck you see.
I find it interesting that as homeschoolers, we can actually incorporate that as kind of a core competency, where it'd be difficult to even see how you would do that in a more traditional setting. So because you can't measure it very well.
No.
You can't score it. You basically it's a question of involvement, and so by immersing ourselves in it, that's something that you can do as part of a relationship and family that's hard to do as a parent teacher or as a teacher student type of relationship.
Yes. And also Charlotte Mason says that she cares less about how much her students know and more about how much her students care. Like, we're creating an ability to have empathy for other people, for other situations, and ability to add beauty to the world instead of subtract it. So the more people care about the world around them and the people they're with, the more change they can affect on a society overall. So
now, as the children got older, we switched from a Charlotte Mason to a classical approach when we joined our classical conversations. What are the similarities and differences between those two approaches?
Well, there's some debate over what is classical education today. Meaning there's a new neoclassical movement that's focused differently than the original classical movement. So that original movement was focused on gaining an understanding of truth, beauty, and goodness in the world. And I think that is compatible with Charlotte Mason in that that's what she's doing, is helping students gain that familiarity with truth, beauty, and goodness. So some parts of CC are quite compatible with that. And there's others that aren't. So we actually joined Classical Conversations as a family because we needed some community for our older student as he went forward, and he needed people to bounce ideas off with and be with, and we were looking for that community more than a particular curriculum. Now, we did wind up using the full challenge curriculum, but we used substantially less of it when our kids were younger, when they were in kindergarten through 6th grade. From 7th grade on, they've all been in a challenge class doing challenge curriculum, but then we go through and edit their guides so that they're having a little bit different experience than some of their classmates. Mm-hmm. So I've forgotten the question. I don't know if I've answered it.
Yeah. So I mean, I was mostly looking for, what are some differences in the approach? Like, where are they different? Where are they the same? You mentioned that the traditional classical approach was truth, beauty, and goodness, and that's very much what Charlotte Mason had in mind. Are there ways that they're doing it differently, or?
So a classical curriculum might focus more on memorizing some things that Charlotte wouldn't suggest that you memorize, like specific dates or lists of parts of the anatomy in order, something like that. Where Charlotte Mason would have you focus on memorizing poetry, hymns, folk songs, things that are beautiful. Mm-hmm. Both things are going to need you to complete a math curriculum of some description. And when you come to things like foreign languages, Latin, Spanish, regardless of what it is, Charlotte Mason would have you learn that in a more conversational and a more conversational way that's focused on daily usage, whereas a classical education might get really deep into memorizing grammar rules and vocabulary lists instead of using the language.
Gotcha. So, now it sounds like as the years progress, the differences get smaller between the two approaches.
Yeah.
So how do you, as you also teach at Classical Conversations, how does Charlotte Mason influence how you work your class at Classical Conversations?
Well, that's an interesting question. When I I have an upper level high school class, so I am much more likely to ask open-ended questions and drive conversation, assuming that they've read what they said they would read, than to ask them specific questions that require them to know a specific detail of material. I'm looking for idea synthesis overall and how things are working, how the world is working together, instead of asking them for the date of the beginning of the Civil War or the exact location of whatever. I'm looking more for how are these people in history working together to accomplish this, or what were the effects of a situation for the future. So I guess I ask different questions than I would if I were a public school teacher or a teacher with a class that has to answer specific questions on a test. I'm never teaching to a test. I'm always teaching for wonder.
So how do you hope that the wonder view of life will affect the children as they go into adulthood?
Well, I should hope that they continue to notice beauty around them and to wonder about what could be when they observe what is. I really feel like that's what leads to lifelong education, is a desire to keep learning new things. So I should hope they all leave high school still curious and let that curiosity drive them into their future.
Awesome. Well, Christa, thank you so much for joining us today, and I appreciate your time.
Oh, you're welcome, John. Thanks for having me on.